You're well in.
10.
10, all right, very good. First thing on our agenda is approval of the minutes from previous meeting. Hope everybody had a chance to read them. And then can I have a motion to approve? Thank you, and a second to thank you. And any questions, deletions, corrections, anybody would like to make? And all those in favor of approval as written, say aye. Aye. Next thing on the agenda is Bo Payne's report. Mr. Payne, Dr.
Yeah, just a quick update on hunting season so far. So 2 months in now, it was October, November down. We had 65 deer reported from 27 hunters. Slight change from last year, 62 deer from 23 hunters, so we're pretty much the same. Couple more hunters and three more deer. 35 of those deer were taken from 13 of the properties that we manage, which is, again, pretty stable from last year. 33 deer coming from 15 town properties. All the other deer, the balance of those deer, the 30 other deer were taken on private property, reported to us electively. We still run the raffle program. So it's one raffle period every 2 weeks. So we've had 4 raffle periods. $600 has been awarded in those 4 periods.
Just out of curiosity, about 4 different people or some?
Same person also.
Same person.
Yep. So we have conditions, right, as part of the raffle program for it to be under its initial authorization or whatever you wanted to call it. There's a threshold to cross before you get into it, right? So you have to take 4 deer from town managed properties. And then starting with your 4th deer, every deer thereafter gets you 1 additional ticket into the raffle hat. I use a cup. I used to use a hat, but I use a cup now. In that 2-week period. And the 2-week periods are just the first 2 weeks of the month, the second 2 weeks of the month, first 2 weeks of the month, second 2 weeks of the month, over and over and over. You don't have to kill 4 deer every single period. 4 gets you in for the season, and then every one thereafter gets you a chance in whatever raffle is open during that period of time. So we've only had, just now, we had a 3rd hunter beat the 4 deer threshold. So we've had, now it's 3 people who are potentially could win.
But yeah, a logical question is, the same person waiting 4 times, does it have any, do you feel like, now we've had 2 more people, I guess, that have got the minimum 4 deer. You know, since we don't have the flyover anymore, and I'm talking about we have money available, is it any incentive? Because they're gonna, no, you don't think so? Nobody's in it for the money type of thing,
The
no,
one hunter is going to shoot these deer regardless.
right?
He just will stagger when he shoots them to make sure that he gets into a raffle whenever that raffle is open.
Okay,
Right, so like, for instance, on the first, the new raffle period opened. So he shot a deer on the first.
so we awarded $150, is that what it was?
150 for each of those periods, right? Another condition of the program, although we don't have to usually deal with this except for in January, is we raffle off 1 $100 gift card for every 2 eligible hunters in that period.
Okay,
Okay. Then a couple of years ago, we initiated a second prize, right? So we do that. Your name comes out for the $100 prize, and then we raffle off 1 $50 gift card prize as a second prize. So once we do the first raffle, the names go back in the cup, mix them around, pull a name out again. If it's only 1 person in the cup, the name goes back in, the name comes back out. That's the process that I follow.
Right.
So But the maximum that any individual hunter could win in any raffle period is limited to the $100 and $150. So if you've won, but you're in there and you're in there and I'm in there, then one of us has a chance to win another $100 gift card, but you can't win two $100 gift cards.
My last comment on this, thanks, this is my last meeting as your liaison, is speaking for the town board, knowing the seriousness of how serious they are about deer management and reducing the herd. Anything that you come up with, any clever thing that you can come up with above and beyond what you're doing right now, you should seriously entertain. Because I think that, current town, I can only speak for the current, the five of us, you'd be, I think, very, very supportive of anything. I think that money is, the amount of money that we're paying to get this service done by recreational hunters is enormous. We don't want to lose that, at anything that you can do to sweeten that pot, even if it's a minor, thing. Personally, I'm one of five, and I think Jerry would, and I think I could speak for the other four people, we'd be very much in favor of that. Yeah, just so any of you that come up with, as you're sitting at home, you think about how you might want to sweeten it up to increase this, because I do want to stroke the recreational hunter and value them and say, hey, even if the take two for the first 4 months, October, November, December, January, it's 8 less deer. That's huge. It's even if you're out there, I'd like to be able to
Sure,
reward.
Jim. The catchword there is recreational.
Right.
And that's what they're out there for.
Right.
They enjoy it. They
Yep.
go out either with a friend or a buddy or by themselves. They take their meat and stuff like that. I don't know of anybody who's out there for the money.
Right.
Okay, so it's very hard to entice people to
right.
just for that.
All right, okay.
Okay, so,
Yep.
but we keep it in mind all the time.
Yep.
And we'll see what happens. And probably more important along those lines is over the years, if we can entice more hunters
Yes.
to go out, okay, that may help us in the thing. But what you really need to do is find a couple hunters that are very good at it and are willing to go out there and enjoy going out there frequently and taking multiple deer,
Yes.
okay?
It's really a function of work-life balance is what it comes down to with recreational hunting, right? It's not.
Yes.
People.
That's a good point. Good
hunt
point.
as much as they can hunt.
That's a good point.
And we're not equipped or
Right.
in making any effort to try to change that work-life balance,
Right.
right? We can't do that. It's a recreational pursuit. So for the most part, most hunters will hunt all of the time that they want to hunt. And that usually encompasses all of the time that they can hunt.
Yep.
So,
I hear you.
we hit a wall there.
Yep.
The exception being people who have a incredible amount of time to dedicate to their recreational pursuit.
Yep.
Those are typically young people who have large school breaks or maybe are unemployed, taking a gap year or something like that, or retired individuals who have, that's what they do with their time. So I forget the exact number, but I think we've had somewhere on the order of 50 or more new hunters come into this program over the course of my tenure. It was my 8th season running this program. And I can get you a real number if you want.
No, that's a good approximate.
But it's several years. Like this year alone, we had 5 new people enroll in the program, brand new to our program. They've never, all of them have hunted previously. All but one had never hunted on Shelter Island before. And as you can see, the total number of deer reported in that period of time has stayed pretty much the same. So it's like the same number of hunters, regardless of who the hunters are.
Right.
We have about the same success rate with about the same number of people going in the field. So it's not always just getting more people. That doesn't always that doesn't translate to just more deer. Every now and then, it's usually like 1 in 10 then I'll find, or we'll have a new hunter who joins a program who is then an above average producer, which is usually because they're an above average time-wise hunter. That's really what it comes down to. Those individuals are getting fewer and fewer between, right? So maybe it was 1 in 10. I would say it's probably getting closer to 1 in 15 now, right? The average hunter takes less than 1 deer, right? When we do all the math for all of our hunters, it's sub 1 deer on average. And then we have a few hunters that take in the dozens or multiple dozens of deer. So the average is very, very, very heavily weighted to people who have an enormous amount of time.
Can I add something there? This is Julia on Zoom.
Sure, Julie.
Yeah, I just texted Bo earlier today about this. I was looking over my files and, in regards to what he just mentioned, it takes about 30 hours of actually sitting to produce 1 deer. And that, I mean, and that's if you're going out even that much. The other thing is that with a lot of the new hunters we got, it's just a very slow process. Just getting them is important, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a long time. That's why it's important to get new people, but you can't expect results immediately like that. That's all I wanted to say.
That's absolutely correct. It takes years to become a good hunter. And the other thing, as hunters know, your best opportunity to harvest a deer is the first time you're in that stand. And that means it doesn't matter who's in that stand, okay? So we can get new hunters, put them in a stand, but that place gets burnt pretty quick. And so, there's a limit to number of places you can hunt. I have, a bunch of 2 good friends that we hunt together. We have 2 or 3 places we can hunt. But, within the first couple days, we have to take a break, let the deer filter back in there before we can find, have deer back in there. So, there's a lot of limiting factors on how you harvest deer. It's not just, non-hunters see them all the time. They think it's like, walking outside and shooting a cow or something. It isn't. It's still hunting.
But then, and also to add what Jim said about funds for different things, I had spoken to Bo earlier in the year about this, but I think one thing we could use possibly is hunting equipment for some of these new hunters. I'll go over this more in my report later, but of the 4, I have 2 adults and 2 youths that are new hunters. And although I did get some equipment for them, it was not easy, and I had to scrounge around for a lot of stuff. And I think it would be great if we are going to mentor new people that we can somehow get equipment. Like a great thing, of course, is a double tree stand so that you can sit with them as they're learning. So that's something I'd like us to consider, maybe investing in some equipment. And again, when I say equipment, honestly, a lot of the hunting double tree stands are not a lot of expense. So something like that. Also, I have 1 youth who doesn't have a bow. So he can't really get going because he doesn't have the equipment to utilize. And this child has a lot of potential. So I'd like to maybe work on that, and just, clothing equipment, I think, is something that can help.
Okay.
Is that something you could create a donation program for hunters that have extra equipment donated to the program?
Yeah, I think, didn't we have something like that at one time, Bo?
We have talked about it, okay? I think maybe we've had a few little things come in, but we haven't actively pushed it that hard. And I don't know how well it would do. Okay, well, we can try. Clearly that's, and I don't know, but I'll sit down and talk about, we put an email out to all the people on the thing. If you have extra equipment, just drop it off someplace, okay? And that we can maybe distribute it. So I think that's a easy way to start and see if we can do it inexpensively.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a little, obviously, it's late for the 2024 budget, but in the 2025 budget, as you're moving forward, those are the kinds of things that I was talking about, though. The town board thought nothing about, spending, $26,000 for flyover, so having $1,000 in there where we can get double tree stands and some equipment and stuff like that for new hunters as an incentive to get people out there, especially people who live here on the island. I think it's worthwhile, I think it's something that, I think it should be part of the budget, I would build it in. Because it's nice to ask for the donations, but it's an extra hassle you have to do. I just think that if you have a budgetary line for equipment, for new hunters, those are the kinds of things that I would like to think about for the future things. Make your job easier,
All right, moving on to cold storage and the butchering. We've had 44 deer stored in the cooler through the end of November. That's the same as we had last year. 20 of them were for personal use. We have part of the program is allowing hunters to keep their own deer for their own purposes in the cooler. We have it running anyway. So 20 of those deer have been ultimately for personal use. That was down a little bit from last year, which just means a couple more deer have been, ended up into the donation program this year. So
bigger deer, because of the acorn coming.
Yeah, anecdotally weights are up a bit. Yep.
Weights are up a little bit?
Yep.
Yeah. Not as much.
For the most part. We've had about 475 pounds. It was like 476. Donated through the end of November. So that's been running through the cooler, the freezer, that we have down at the recycling center. I think I have like 72 people on the mailing list now, on the email notification list. During the early season, I pretty much send an email out every time I put the meat out. Only once this season so far have I not done that. I try to mix it up a little bit. So sometimes I will put the meat out there. Once we get more meat, I change the strategy a little bit. The notification is great, but then it's somewhat counterproductive if all of the people come and take all of the meat all at one time, which they do occasionally. So I'll try to stagger the notifications a bit to give people who aren't on the notification, because there's plenty of people who still aren't on the notification list, give them an opportunity to just happen upon it based on whatever their normal rotation through the area is. But for the most part, we send the notices out and the meat goes, within minutes.
One deer approximately, on an average,
Depends.
it really depends, but on an average, in between small and large, how many pounds was a medium-sized deer produced for?
So you're pretty much getting, if you're lucky, 30% of dressed weight. That's a real, pretty good number. If you are exceptionally detailed in your processing, you can possibly, and if it's a larger deer, right, then you can bump that up closer to 40% of dress weight. If it's a small deer, you're going to get closer to the lower end, maybe 25% of dressed weight. And that's if you're really good. Okay. So if you have a young of the year deer come in, that deer is probably dressed at no more than 50 pounds, if you're lucky, right? So you're lucky to get 12, 13 pounds off of a small deer like that. An average doe, a year and a half, 2.5-year-old doe, you're probably getting on the order of 20 to 25 pounds, depending on how healthy she is. And larger deer, I think this year we had one male that was donated that set the record so far, and I think it was like 39 and change, which was serious amount of deer meat to be getting off of one animal. So
That was a large buck that produced that, huh?
yes, yep. So and it varies widely, right? Shot placement changes the amount of meat that you're getting out of it. Former injury changes the amount. So occasionally we'll have deer that have been hit by cars or something to that effect, previously shot.
What's in there, just scar tissue type of stuff?
So it depends, right? Sometimes there's infection.
Yep.
Critters live with infection, right? Earlier conversation.
Yep,
Right? Sometimes, usually when deer are hit by a car and survive, the area, just think of like massive bruising, right? Where the muscle tissue is so badly damaged that it's no longer fit for consumption, right? It's not doing anything. It's atrophied in the animal and it's not doing anything. Sometimes injury leads to atrophy and the muscle just shrinks, right? You just lose that muscle tone. So there's a lot of different components that go into that.
The 44 deer are not necessarily from the 65, right? Because we get, right?
Correct. No. Those 44 deer are all accounted for in the 65.
But anybody can use any hunter can hang their deer in the.
Can use the cooler, absolutely.
Yes.
But once they do, then they've reported their deer to me.
Yeah,
So-
no, I get that, but it's available to everybody, I was just.
Yeah. So the 65 deer is just a number of deer that people have told us we've shot.
Right,
There are way more than that have been killed, right? But these are just comparable numbers.
I didn't know if we were getting any deer in the cooler from other recreational hunters that were just storing it there and,
Absolutely.
yeah, okay.
100%. Yep, they're
What
all,
do you think what do you think the report number for you is, percentage-wise?
it's dropping like a rock over the past couple of
It
years.
has, I thought so too, yeah.
We were at a really, really high report rate.
Right.
Now we have very, very low report rates so again, we require that if you're going to hunt on town managed properties, then you have to report your harvest to us. We ask you that if you are part of that program, Doc, you're part of the program,
Sure.
Julie, you're part of the program. If you take a deer on private property, you're not obligated to report that to us, but we ask you to report that to us, which we've always done. And then I ask hunters who are not part of our program at all, completely outside of our program. I'm going to use Mishamik's hunters as an example for that. Those hunters are not enrolled in our program, but we ask them to let us know what they're taking on the island, right? So we have all these different things. The percentage of people who are not enrolled in the program, who are successfully taking deer on private property and then reporting those deer to us, has dropped to almost zero. Very, very low. It's just kind of the way it is, unless I track them down and explicitly ask for it. We're not really getting that information anymore.
Are there any recreational hunters that donate the animal to the venison program completely, or?
Yeah,
Oh, sure.
yeah, like just a random,
Just, they're hunting,
Yep.
they've already gotten their, but they want to continue hunting and
they have nothing to do with our program whatsoever,
Yeah.
except they know that we take deer, absolutely.
Okay.
That one deer that was a large male that gave us the most meat, was a guy who was here hunting from North Carolina, he shot his deer on private property, he's not part of the program, and then donated the deer.
Okay, good. Nice.
I don't know if we want to make a precedent. I'm looking at you, Julia, going back to that, getting some equipment this year. When we don't have it necessarily in the budget, we have a budget. We could probably, as always, move things around a little bit. But two things come to mind. Number one, an article in the paper just saying, we have a bunch of new hunters that are looking for equipment. Margaret and Jim Colligan, would you write a check for $25, $50 towards some, you get 10 of us doing that. That'd be a lot of people, and you suddenly have $250, $500, there. The other thing that goes through my mind is, I won't mention names of people that are fairly well off that come and pick up your meat for free. I don't ask you for a donation, after the end of the season. You've picked up meat several times during the course of the year. Would you like to make a donation to keep the program alive and well and keep it going? That kind of thing. I still like the idea of putting it in the 2025 budget, as a line item, but in between, that's money that perhaps can come about $500,000 or something. You never know. Somebody says, you know, they're so serious about deer, they hear 5 new hunters, they take out a checkbook and write you a check for 500 or 1,000, you know, because they're so concerned about deer management on the island. So you could get that. I just throw it out for whatever it's worth. I don't know.
I see that role possibly being, you know, sort of a non-town or non-program sanctioned
Right.
function. In other words, like a hunter group or hunter organization that was involved in the program, which there isn't really any such thing currently. But hypothetically, if there was a group of our hunters
Right.
that said, hey, we're trying to drum up some support for helping more of our hunters, then we can certainly serve as like a conduit for connecting all those dots. But rather than like
Yeah.
private citizen donate money to the town and then the town
Yeah,
spend
I get
that money, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think there's probably some gray areas where
Yeah.
if instead we said, hey, you are very interested in supporting new hunters, you are a new hunter, you should talk to him, right? Like, we could do that type of thing.
Would Julia feel comfortable
in that kind of role, even though she's on the committee and she's a committee member, just saying that she works a lot with new hunters, is involved in training, buying equipment to teach hunting, and now we're talking about equipment hunting. Is that something that makes it less? You're not making a check out the town of Shelter Island?
Julie's already doing that.
Oh, all right.
Honest with you, like,
All right.
right, if there's, right, if
Okay.
between, you know, various, or, I don't want to speak for you, Julie, except for I see you're coughing a lot, but she's already kind of functioning in that role.
Okay, okay.
I know if somebody came to me and said, hey, I need X, Y, and Z, or a mentor or something like that, I'm not mentoring anybody, that's not something that I'm doing. I would say, have you contacted Julia yet? She seems to be, you know, in contact with people who are doing that sort of thing, so we
Yes.
can kind of go back and forth that way.
Okay.
Good. Then the last thing I had for you was the tick sampling, which I did at the end of October, as we've done since 2013. The sampling effort focuses exclusively on adult black-legged ticks, deer ticks. If you look just towards the chart itself there, our overall numbers were down. The average number of adults found per site was down, as was the single location that we sample out in Shaman Point. What's interesting is, you know, the past 3 years in a row, the changes in number of ticks found seem to track pretty well between all of our sites, or the average for all of our sites, and the area at the point. So, you know, the theory was that with the removal of the 4-poster program, tick populations would likely begin to trend subject only or primarily to environmental considerations. And as we know, we kind of assumed that was what was going on out on the point to begin with. That's why we chose that location. Mike chose that location years ago, is because it was presumably not significantly impacted by the presence of 4-posters. So the results seem to be supporting that you know, ultimately tick populations are going to continue to fluctuate as they would anywhere without a 4-poster program. Is that
What's interesting also.
hold pretty true, Scott?
Yes. Interesting is that the Lone Star tick numbers went up significantly, or relatively significantly this year. And the black-legged tick actually went down a little bit this year. You know, may just be, you know, timing, may just be, you know, anecdotal that it's happening that way, but be interested to see what happens over
Yes,
time.
I think it's more important to look at trends.
Right,
As
absolutely. This
opposed
is
to
not a
yearly,
trend.
we see yearly fluctuations everywhere
Right,
because of
absolutely.
environmental as opposed
Right,
to.
and that's what I
Yeah.
suspect. It's
Absolutely.
environmentally, okay, you know, the black-legged ticks are taken in the fall, and these, what do you call it, the Lone Star were dragged in the spring, so huge difference of what's happening in the environment between spring and fall.
Right, but just as a point of ultra clarity, the reasons for doing that is to coincide with the activity.
Absolutely.
Life stages that we're seeking, right? So
Right.
if we were to look for Lone Star nymphs in the end of October, we wouldn't find them.
Correct,
We could have
Correct.
beautiful results if we did that.
correct.
Problem solved, guys.
Good job.
are no ticks. The y-axis, I think I ask you this every year. The y-axis is number of ticks flagged for 5 minutes or per 30 seconds?
30 second flagging.
30
which is-
seconds.
We've actually converted a number of years ago
Yeah.
to distance, right, because Moses was doing the same thing, so. But it was originally the 30 second flaggings.
Okay, so
And
that
that's the
number is the
average.
average in that 30.
It's the average of all sites, right? So 30 second flaggings at this site, total number divided by the number of sites.
And you do about 10 sites, is that right?
Yeah, so this year we had 7 sites.
7 sites.
Right, so originally we had 10 sites, and that included Shamrock sites. We don't have any quote unquote control sites in Shamrock anymore. We had gained over the years a few other sites around the island, and then we've subsequently lost some of those sites through either development or ownership changes, things like that. But again, that's part of the reason why we use an average, right? So we're trying to mitigate the number of variances generated by that.
Yeah, and the county comes in, because I saw them at Mashamek in the parking lot, and on 114,
They drag up by around the visitors.
3-4 weeks ago, whatever it was, somewhere in the fall, back in, I want to say late October, maybe, somewhere around there.
It
do the
was
same
around
time.
late October, because
Yeah.
it came right before the Hunters of Color.
We do at the same time.
Yeah.
Right, Chris was here while I was out doing ours, so it's all, right, we try to, all of this is set up in,
Late October is your target time?
yeah, so the last week of October, first week of November, depending on weather and personnel
You were on
availability.
those. Do you want more Mashamek sites? You can have more
No,
Mashamek sites.
we had,
You can have as many as you want. Feel free.
yeah, so Mashamek used
Just take your
to,
ticks with you when you.
Do the whole thing and take them out of there, right?
used to do their sites, and then when Mike retired, I took over doing all of those sites.
That's your way of saying we'll have more sites if you do this.
We don't need more sites.
Okay,
The average works.
okay. Just offering, there's plenty of space. Just take them with you when you go. It's a party
Yeah, so
gift.
that's.
Anything else on that, Bo, or you want to move on to budget? You might be the best one to talk about the
Yeah,
budget.
so the budget was passed, and our budget specifically, or Deer and Tick's budget specifically, was reduced by the $26,000 from Deer Reduction Management. They removed that because we're not doing a flyover this year. Essentially, all of the other line items stayed the same from year to year. There was some changes in my line item, just where my salary comes from, or if it was moved to a different part of the police budget.
Yep.
And there was an increase in the animal control officer line for our animal control officer. So there's some money differences there, but those aren't directly related to the Deer and Tick programs.
The removal of the $26,000 because we weren't doing the flyover was a last minute kind of adjustment because we were strapped. We remember we started 11.9 and we ended up getting down to 6.2 or 3 or somewhere around there. And it was a struggle even to get there. It was a real struggle. So $26,000, every point is kind of computed on $124,500. So it's roughly a fifth of a point or 0.2 of a point. But instead of the budget being 6.3, it would have been 6.5, you know, and we could go across the budget of hundreds of items and say the same thing. We were desperate to get it down as low as we could. So it, you know, I spoke, you know, obviously I was trying to keep that, you know, in there, you know, for future years, but the board assured me, and I think, you know, the most important people are Meg and Amber, you know, because those are the two people returning, that for the, at least for the next few years, said to me, hey, listen, if the Deer and Tech Committee decides to have another flyover in a year or two or whatever, and we'll put that money back in. But just this year, things were tough.
Right, just to refresh everybody, you had made a plea that we take that 26 or part of it and put it into a forestry stewardship program.
Yeah.
Along with
Yes.
Gordon Gooden and Howard Johansson's programs, and just try to start that up.
Yeah.
And as we all know, and I appreciate that we're a committee that makes recommendations.
Right.
The board has to take those recommendations and then weigh them against budget and what they hear at the IGA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they did that. They considered it, and unfortunately, they had to take it out. And, you know, if they want to put it back in at some point, it is really, needs to be looked at as a overall program. It's expensive, and it has to go on for multiple years. And I think it's worthwhile, okay, and they should look at it in that light. But again, it's going to have to be a commitment of significant money for multiple years. And it doesn't make any sense to start it 1 year and cut it next year. So they looked at it, they considered it, and I appreciate them doing that. Unfortunately, it had to be cut. So
Yeah. But the stewardship programs is something that's going to gain momentum.
that's what
I didn't spoke.
that was my hope from
Yeah,
the beginning.
speak on your behalf about access, easier access in, retrieval of deer coming out, a little easier when you're not fighting vines and invasives and things like that. But I think the new town board, it's going to become a priority, is to dedicate a person actually, you know, of the highway department that will be dedicated to that job, particularly during the spring and summer months, you know, when maybe early fall. Definitely. So I'm hoping that takes place, because we want to see people out and about, but we want to see the trails. By the way, again, you keep looking over at Shelmick. I'm a person that's been in there the last 17 years. The trails have never, ever been better. I mean, just absolutely, you don't get a tick on you if you stay on the trails. I mean, really, when you venture off the trails, yeah, you're going to go into that. But the wide, you can have a nice conversation with somebody walking along for 5 or 6 miles and never think about getting a tick on you. So not guaranteed, but
Can we do not make?
no, they do a great job there, and we should be learning from trail management from, you know, Dan, who's done a magnificent job, you know, with trail management.
Okay, very good. Moving on, Green Expo. Julia and I were both at the Green Expo. I thought it went very well. I'll let Julia talk a little bit about it. Very little talk or concern about deer, but a lot of concern about the increased number of ticks, and that was mostly the Lone Star ticks that I think we all saw earlier in the year. But it was good. I thought it went very well. Some people asking about spraying lawns, and I gave them my opinions, but you know, everybody has to make their own decision on that. Julia, what do you think of the Green Expo?
No, I think you're correct. I think compared to last year, we had a lot more people approaching our table asking about calling. And I think it was because they had some people from the North Fork that were looking into it, that came up to our table. This was last year. So we didn't have those folks. We also had, we had one gentleman that came up who was a new hunter. If you recall, Jim, he was asking about, you know, access to land, and I gave him Bo's email and my email, and anyways, so that was good. And I think, yeah, we just had a lot of people. I think we gave out a lot of materials. I feel like I handed out, again, a lot of pamphlets, a lot of wallet size tick identification cards.
Right.
I like, honestly, I feel like I've done it, I think 3 years with you now, Jim, and every year I feel like it is getting better. I think we're getting better at it. We're just trying different ways to reach people, and I think people are coming to our table more. which is
Yeah,
good.
there was a lot of interest. I mean, we were hardly ever sitting there by ourselves, so.
That's true.
Would keep in touch with that gal at Southampton Hospital that provides those materials for us.
Right, we will. That's our
Yeah.
go-to for information to give to people. It's a great brochure to hand out.
It is so inclusive, it covers everything, really is great, sure.
Okay, Julia, you want to go on with your educational report? You have much to say?
Yeah, so, I think that we all met in August, right? Was it August that we last saw each other after the
Yes.
meeting? Okay, so, I'm just gonna go with like just a quick timeline, because in case people have forgotten. So if you recall, in the spring, the Deer and Tick Committee, along with two representatives from Mashamek, we always do an educational, piece with the kids at the high school, sorry, at the, elementary, Shelter Island School. So that took place again this year in May. So this is, I think, now almost like the third year we've done that educational piece. So that went through. Then we did the archery program for kids all summer. That was a great success, if you recall. And then, also during the summer, I completed finally my hunter, education instructor course, which took like forever because of COVID, but I finally got that done. And my thought on getting that done was for twofold. One was just a personal accomplishment because I love teaching. But the second thing was I was thinking that if we ever want to offer hunter ed on Shelter Island, which is actually the first, when I took my hunter education course, I took it on Shelter Island. It was at the school. So if we ever want to do that again, it does help to have somebody who's a resident who's already a hunter ed. You always have to have at least two people teaching. You don't ever teach a course alone. It's always co-taught. But I was thinking in the back of my mind that would be beneficial to us if we ever want to run that. We now have me, one resident who's local, who can help somebody else teach it. So I got that done. The benefit also of doing that was that in the summer, we took 3 Shelter Island youths with us to that course. It was up in Huntington. 2 of those 3 students got their hunting licenses and are now hunting with mentors on Shelter Island, and they've been out several times, which is great. So the other thing is that in August, I met up with the Mashamek team. We had a Zoom call. Cody, I think you were on vacation.
It was, yeah.
You weren't there, but I met with everybody else, Jeff, Cindy, Becca, and my supervisor from DEC, Kelly. And we basically put together a plan to do all-female mentored hunt in Mashamek. We weren't able to do it for this year because of just other things on the Mashamek calendar, but we tentatively are going to revisit it like next summer at a meeting again, and we're hoping for the fall to run that. So everybody was, very supportive of that and very excited to do that again. We have actually done that before, so I wanted to sort of resurrect that and do it again. So that happened in August. Then in the fall, as I kind of alluded to before, we have 4 new hunters that are out hunting on Shelter Island. Two are adults and two are youths. And actually, I have one of my other mentors is on Zoom. That's Lee Behrens is on the call here listening in. So what we did was we created a text string with some of the mentors. Another mentor of ours is Doug Sherrard, who's hunter here in Shelter Island, involved in a couple of town committees too. So he's one of the mentors along with Lee, myself, and we basically put all these new hunters on its text string. And the benefit of that was this way, we can all talk about, ethics, equipment, deer behavior, shot placement. We also did a lot of tracking, blood analysis. And this is all really good for the kids to see and have a safe place where they can text and learn. And I followed up with the kids that just to make sure that it was achieving what we intended for it to achieve, and the kids really like it, and they said, please, let's keep doing it. So we're doing that, and then we've taken them out. We set up tree stands, blinds. We took some of these new hunters out. Pretty much, I just decided this fall season, since we do more of the educational component and people learning how to take care of themselves in terms of tick prevention, that's more about spring and summer. And since we are in hunting season now in the fall, I decided that it was important to just focus on mentoring, you know, in our committee, we've talked so many times about hunter attrition. And then Bo mentioned it just earlier, we have to get new people in, and this is like a very slow, long process, but you got to start somewhere. So I decided that I was gonna do more of this and sort of put aside my own hunting stuff and just focus on mentoring, which I actually love. I've discovered that I love doing this, so it gives me joy to do it. I'm having a good time. And hunting, as you know, is a very solo, isolating sport at times, and it's kind of nice to have a young person or another adult with you, and you're sitting with them, and it's great. So that's been going on September, October. I pretty much every other hunt I've had somebody with me, sitting with me. And then in the fall, again, I'm trying to stay in this like mentoring mindset to get better at mentoring, to hopefully help more people in Shelter Island. So I participated in the Mashamik Hunters of Color hunt, which Cody was there with me, and that was amazing. I hope we can continue doing that. And actually, one of those hunters is probably going to be coming to hunt with me again, the young lady that I worked with. So that was in November. And that has pretty much been what it's about. The only other thing in terms of me is I did a lot of dog tracking. I did 10 tracks. Only one was on Shelter Island. The rest were like the North Fork, South Fork. But every time I did the dog tracking, we took photos, we did a lot of analysis, and we shared it with those new hunters. So the benefit of that, of course, is that they get to understand, you know, all the components of hunting. Not that it's not always so easy. And you know, so I think the kids also learned a lot from the two mentors tracking, sharing those experiences. So that's kind of been my focus, again, just as I mentioned before, getting new people out, comfortable, learning, feeling that they can ask questions. It's been more of like a social time, I think, this fall. And then as we wind that down and end of January, moving into next spring again, where I plan to go back to the school and do another, you know, the same educational event that we always do for tick prevention, probably like May or June. I have to talk to Dr. Dolger about that. But again, if we could somehow, maybe like as Jim said, I'd be totally open to, you know, connecting these new people with donors, or, you know, we somehow get a line in for equipment. Again, you have to start somewhere, and because it is a slow process, you know, it takes time, but everything takes time. It's about finding a balance. So
Julia, maybe after this season is over, you get back in touch with me and Bo, and we'll try to get an email out to some of our hunters. And, you know, if they have any extra equipment, we'll set up some kind of a donation program, if we can do that.
Great. Yeah, I mean, as of what I did right now was I just wrote to a bunch of hunter groups that I'm a member of, and I just reached out to all board members, and I said, does anyone have any, you know, any clothing, equipment, stuff that you just aren't going to use? I was very pleased. A lot of people, I mean, the two young ladies that are hunting, pretty much they didn't pay for any of their clothing. They got it all donated. So it was very
That's great.
Yeah.
And logistically, we may need some help as far as where to store stuff. Somebody, if we get a bow or two or a tree stand or two, we'll need to figure out where to do it. And I can help a little bit in that with my barn. But, okay, I can't have it totally filled up. But more important, we'll need we'll need a pathway to go from the donor to us to the recipient as smoothly as possible. So.
Julie, one important thing with Doug being the president of Silver Beach Association and you being in the group now.
Yeah.
Like what, Doug, if he puts out a flash to the 175 members of Silver Beach Association about possible donations, you got 10% of us, you get 17 donors, they each wrote a check for $50, you'd end up with a lot of money. You know, you're close to $1,000 right there. So I think that's a nice way. The town's not involved. The association is taking it on. He could mention that the Shelter Island Association, other associations might want to get involved in that. So, you know, that's a great way of keeping the town out of it. Letting private donations go to the associations having the association write a check back to you to spend that money for, equipment. My second question is, or comment is, of the new hunters that you're getting, especially young people of students, do they tend to come from hunting families or do they tend to come from non-hunting families? I'm just curious.
They're from non-hunting
They're
families.
from non-hunting families,
One
okay?
one is my daughter, so we can't probably count her because,
Right.
but the other two are, no, they're not. And the
Okay,
other adults I'm thinking of, no, they're, I don't believe, well, no, I don't think so. I don't think.
okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah.
Very good, thanks, Julie. Next is I've got to put my glasses back, the invasive plant
Initiatives?
initiative, which I've talked about briefly. We tried to put something together with Gordon and Howard, and it didn't go anyplace. I hope it stays on the town board's agenda for next year. It probably more is in their ballpark. We will support it as best as we can, but I would remind the town board and everybody that they have an incredible resource in Cody, if they can convince her to help them out on that, because she really knows a whole lot about the right way to do things. So don't let that go, don't let it just go by. So that's all I had to say about that. Then meeting schedule for next year. We did 5 meetings this year. I think that would be good for next year. We could always slide a 6th one in if we have a urgency to do anything. I will be away for the second half of January and all of February. I would suggest what we do is, and I'll just throw out the start, Bo and I talked a little bit on, we do one in April, all right? That's after the whole hunt and cull period, so we'll have our numbers then. Then May, getting ready for the people starting to come down and work in the gardens and stuff. We'll start doing it in tick drags and stuff like that. We do tick drags in May or June?
We do them at the end of June.
At the end of June. So, but what did we say yesterday?
So then, April,
May?
May, then July for those tick drag results.
Right, July and August,
August, because it's high season, and
right. And then we'll do another one back in
I think we had said
October,
November.
no, excuse me, November. So we have the first month of recreational hunting already in the books. So we can see how that's going.
That's also right after the second tick drag.
Right.
Those are great.
That sound okay for everybody?
So, yeah, April 3rd, May 1st.
Oh, hold it.
Hold on.
April 3rd.
So that first Wednesday of every of those months.
All right, just give them May
May 1st,
1st,
July 3rd,
August.
7th, November 6th.
Okay, thank you.
You got that, Coco?
I do, thank you.
Good.
I'll send out to everyone.
Thank you. All right.
Skipped over the revised Zoom meeting rules stuff.
Right, revised Zoom meeting rules. Okay, we no longer have to have a quorum in-house. All right, our quorum can be online. We still need a quorum.
Yep.
All right, but it can be, we could all be on Zoom if we wanted to. So that's a change from the rules that came down from the state a couple months ago.
Are you a committee of 4 or 5?
We're a committee of 5, so we need 3 people for a quorum. All right, and board liaison report?
Well, I think I've spoken a lot, as I do.
That's good. That's,
I just want to thank everybody. It's been a great run of 8 years as a liaison to the committee, and before that, as a member of the committee for a good number of years. And as I've said to you before, 2 things. Number one, I want to take a month off, which you're not meeting until April. So if the seat does develop on the committee, I'd be more than interested in serving as a committee member somehow and staying with Deer and Tick, because it's something I really enjoy. And I think you guys do a tremendous job. The second thing I wanted to say is exactly that. The faces have changed, the names have changed during the course of my 15 years associated with this committee. but it's gotten better. Just when you think you can't replace a Bill Zidek, you can't replace a Scheibel, Mike, somebody else, you come along and you have Scott and you've got Cody now and you've got Julia, who does a great job with the education. You've got Bo as a main part of this committee, even though he's not technically a committee member, but he's a valuable resource to this committee. I think town boards that I've served with all the people I've served with, have the most tremendous respect for the way you conduct yourself all the time, that, you are data-driven, you are not flying off the handle. I think Jim has taught us, Reed has taught us all well about not reacting to every little piece of data that you get, as Scott has often said, as a researcher himself, trends are important, and you, Jim, you've surely repeated that over and over again. So without any big thing to say, I want to thank you very, very much for your support, and I appreciate everything you've done this town.
And what I'd like to say is thank you, Jim. Okay, you are very, very incredible as far as the amount of work and input that you put into this committee. I want to thank you for your support of this committee, okay? But more important too, for your support of the whole island, for everything you do as on the board. And that goes to, and I hope you'll express our thanks to Jerry and to BJ also. Okay?
Yes,
And I just
definitely.
use those who, because they're leaving.
Yeah.
Okay, but we do appreciate the support that you've given this committee, as well as all the work you guys do for the whole island on all the committees that you're on. So again, thank you very much.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
That's it. Anything else? Any new business? Anybody want to bring anything up? Anybody on Zoom? Okay.
Good job, guys.
Julie Lane, do you have any questions? Not sure she's there still. Sorry name. Okay.
She's probably there, just listening and doing some work.
Okay, very good. And everybody. Okay.
And Julie, thank you very, very much for all the support that you've given the committee as well. We couldn't do it without the helpful articles that you put in the Shelter Island Reporter. So thank you for your hard work as well. Thank you.
And everybody have a very Merry Christmas if I don't see you again.
Happy holidays to everyone.
Okay.
Yes.
Happy
Amen, amen.
To adjourn?
We adjourn.